Welcome, friends and comrades, to another show from the Midwestern Marx Institute for Marxist Theory and Political Analysis. Today, we're going to be discussing the new UAW stand up strike with the Institute's labor guy, Kyle Pettis. Thank you very much, Kyle, for being here. And we'll
Always a
also be
pleasure.
talking about the attempted assassination, at least it seems like an attempted assassination on Robert F. Kennedy's life recently, amongst some other hot topics in the news. We'll get started right after this.
Also realize that the problems of racial injustice and economic injustice cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.
All right. What's up, boys? Good to be with you.
Not a whole lot.
For
Just
sure.
feeling that energy from the UAW strike going on right now. It's a great time.
It's
Yeah,
exciting times.
it's hard not to get uh, the hairs on your arms to stand up uh, when you see what's going on. And what's funny is that I was talking yesterday in the morning with Kyle, and we were talking about the stand up strategy uh, strike, the stand up strike strategy. And you want to tell him what happened, Kyle? The surprise you got when you reached the locations?
Yeah. So like it was I think it was the day before they announced the actual strike locations. Because okay, so normal strike, everybody goes out, everybody's on the picket line. But Sean Fain has instituted this new strategy, which we're going to get into, called the stand up strike, which is a callback to the sit down strike, which is what UAW was able to use back in the 30s to organize Ford and General Motors across the country. So they're get kind of harkening back to that with this name. So the stand-up strike is they're only going to have the strike at certain locations of each individual company, instead of just a nationwide blanket. Every UAW that's in the big three, that being Stellantis, Ford, and GM, going on strike at once. And so my theory was that the plant that my job delivers parts to, and that I'm right here locally near me, the Wentzville plant was going to be targeted, um, because it's the most profitable plant in the country, and it's part of a very critical part of their supply chain. And sure enough, the only General Motors strike to the only General Motors plant to go on strike, get announced, was the Wentzville plant. So that was pretty good time. We had a good time laughing about that. I called Carlos up at like 2 minutes past midnight. Called him and was like, "Hey man, yeah, they just announced it." uh, Got lucky, didn't wake him up, thankfully, but I would have woken him up anyways.
No, those are real Carlos hours.
Right.
That's when
Not
he's
getting
the
my
most
best work
woke.
done. Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. No, it was extremely exciting, and honestly, I was watching the videos with my wife and the build up to this strike, and it's beautiful. It's also great seeing the reaction, and this is something we'll get into when we dive into the segment. But the reactions of O'Brien and the Teamsters and various Teamsters local, and it's very clear that we're at a moment in this labor movement that we have in our country, where we're not like at the highest level of class consciousness yet, but it's pretty clear that workers are seeing themselves as a class and showing solidarity with various struggles and different unions and different jobs, and it's very special to see, and that's all you can ask for, really, at this moment in our history, at this moment in the development of the struggle. So it's extremely inspiring, and what a time to be alive. Basically, is the sort of feeling that I get every time I watch these videos and these reactions from working people.
Hell yeah! I mean, to say that you're talking about unions standing up for each other. I mean, we even had Sean O'Brien, not to be confused with Sean Fain, but the president of the Teamsters Union, come out and declare day before, pretty much, I think it was the day before the strike, saying, "Hey, the big three got to start negotiating because Teamsters don't cross picket lines. So we will shut down all of you. It's not only just them going to be going on strike, not working with your parts, but we're not even going to deliver your parts." You know what I mean? So great to see that, honestly. So pretty much takes the ability for these companies to scab right off the table because they're not even going to have the parts sent to the shops.
Absolutely. Something our buddy who works on the rail union always says is that for years in America, the working class hasn't even seen themselves as a class, really. And, there's this petty bourgeois mindset among the workers that they're just temporarily embarrassed billionaires or millionaires. And
Yeah.
now you're seeing that change with this wave of labor movements and the reawakening of labor in the US. And it's really hard to wage a class struggle if you don't even, if the workers don't even see things along class lines, if they don't see themselves as a class. So to see, the Teamsters, obviously it's in their bylaws or whatever that they don't cross a picket line, but to see them showing solidarity as UAW is announcing this strike and harkening back to strikes of the past and the labor movement of the past, it's really exciting to see. I mean, the lines are being drawn, and they're being drawn along class lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And everybody's coming together in the locals to really get behind this. So they only announced 3 plants, one from each of the big 3 automotive manufacturers, and but all the other locals are what they're calling like on readiness. I mean, like they're taking this like class warfare militancy shit seriously. So they're doing like practice pickets outside. They're doing parking lot rallies with the workers, during like shift when the shift change is happening, and like having like rallies and soapbox speeches in the parking lot from workers talking to the other workers, and they're having a lot more meetings at their locals. Everybody's showing up and getting organized, and that's just as critical. Having that readiness, especially with this new strike strategy. Tomorrow, Sean Fain could get on a live stream and say, "I want 6 more locals going on strike across the country. They're joining in." They're not letting even the local leadership know until the day of. So, and that's to keep everybody on their toes. No leaks, nothing. Company's not going to know what the hell hit them. And this kind of goes into what I wanted to get into about like talking about like the scope of this strategy and like why I think it's so good. But blindsiding the company like this is there's a difference. They already knew there was going to be a strike on the 14th when the demands, when there was no tentative tentative agreement or anything like that. They knew the strike was going to come. What they didn't know is that not everybody was going to be striking. And so they're going to continue to have production going at these other facilities. But tomorrow, if a plant decides they want to go, if Sean Fain decides X plant is going to go on strike tomorrow, that's a lot of money and movement that they're wasting as far as goods being shipped there, trying to account for reduced production at other facilities. I mean, it's a lot of money that they're hitting. It's a lot harder of a financial impact for these companies than it is if they just did a blanket strike, because they would already know, okay, well, we're just not going to have any production at any of our plants. We're not going to continue trying to buy raw materials. We're not going to continue buying from the other companies that supply, like fenders or other parts that go to a assembly line. But if they don't know when the strike is going to come, they're still doing business as usual, and they're still putting that money out into material costs and everything else. So if that suddenly becomes frozen, and they're going to increase the amount of material costs that they're going to be spending trying to cover the lack of production from the plants that are on strike. So for example, if they all of the General Motors transmission plants, so they have plants that specifically just make the transmission, and then the transmission gets shipped to the assembly line. Let's say one of the transmission plants goes down, they're going to try and increase production in all of the other transmission plants that they have to cover that loss of production. So you have all of these other plants that are increasing productions, which means that they're going to be bringing in more parts for producing these transmissions, which is a massive transportation cost. And they're going to, and then if tomorrow Sean Fain says, well, no, now that transmission plant is also going out, they're just going to spend another couple $1 million having to move the parts to a different plant. So having to constantly shuffle these things around really eats into the labor costs for truck drivers that the companies are having to spend. It eats into all types of money on the company's side. So it's an interesting strike idea and strategy, the way that he's doing this. So
That's what people are missing here. So Stu says, so running at half capacity is more painful than an all-out shutdown. How? Yeah, of course it is. Because as the level 3 potato said, they could have prepared for a regular strike. They would have saved a whole lot because they wouldn't have had to keep production going. And now this is something that you mentioned to me when we were talking off camera yesterday. You have new models coming out next year. You're still building parts at the end of the year for the current models. And if the strike lasts long enough, those parts won't be able to be used at all. So, like, in terms of how much the company wastes because of the stand-up strike strategy, it's much more. So, it seems paradoxical, but the stand-up strike model, it hits the companies a whole lot harder. They have to waste more than they would have if it would have been a regular strike.
Exactly. And so talking about the change in the model of car. I mean, the Wentzville assembly line, they pretty much they go on layoff in the beginning of December, and they'll be down for at a minimum 6 weeks every single year to retool all the lines to make the assembly production machinery and everything else, the assembly line. They have to retool it and change it for the next year's model truck and van and everything else. So if they don't reach an agreement by December, then they've wasted all of the money that they've already spent on all of these parts, all of these bodies, everything, millions and millions of dollars, probably billions of dollars, honestly, in material costs that is now going to be functionally worthless because they cannot produce the car. They can't produce a 2023 model in 2024. And if they do, they can't sell it as a new car. They can't. There's a lot of laws stipulating like how they can actually sell that product, and it's a huge loss. And on top of that, they already have a lot of supply issues with their parts. I think about a month before, 3 weeks before the strike happened, they were threatening a layoff at Wentzville already because they were having logistic issues trying to get in certain parts for the assembly line. And so they're having these hiccups already, and then to have this compounding on it, they brought people back they laid people off for a week and then brought them back for a week before the strike because they had no idea what was going on once the strategy was announced. So they brought these people back for a week, only to then Wentzville gets shut down again. So it caused a lot of chaos on the company's side, which is always what you want when you're trying to leverage, in a negotiation.
Yeah, it's been really interesting hearing from you the strategy behind this, and it makes sense. Like, who knows the production process better than the workers, so they can, kind of surgically target the most important parts of that production process in order to hit the company where it hurts, which is their profit. I want to ask you about some of the leftist response to this and some of the criticisms that they've thrown at Sean Fain, but First, I think we should just watch the video of Sean Fain announcing the strike because it was pretty inspiring, gets you hyped up for those who haven't seen it yet. So we tweeted this out from the Midwestern Marks Twitter, but it was originally from the UAW Twitter. Hashtag stand up strike starts tonight at midnight. And this is Sean Fain of the UAW.
Brief, because time's of the essence. For the past 24 hours, we've been actively bargaining with Ford, General Motors, and Stellantis. For the first time in our union's history, we had all three companies bargaining right here at the Solidarity House, leading into the final hours of our strike deadline. We've been working hard, trying to reach a deal for economic and social justice for our members. We have been firm. We are committed to winning an agreement with the Big Three that reflects the incredible sacrifice and contributions UAW members have made to these companies. We've been open. The companies, the members, and the public know that what we've been fighting for. And we've been clear. Midnight on the evening of September 14th is a deadline. UAW family, that deadline is nearly here. Tonight, for the first time in our history, we will strike all three of the Big Three at once. We are using a new strategy, the stand-up strike. We will call on select facilities, locals, or units to stand up and go on strike. Tonight, we call on 3 units to stand up and go on strike at midnight if we do not reach a tentative agreement in the next 2 hours. We're calling on GM, Wentzville Assembly, Local 2250 in Region 4 to stand up and strike. We're calling on Stellantis, Toledo Assembly Complex, Local 12 in Region 2B to stand up and strike. And we're calling on Ford, Michigan Assembly Plant, Final Assembly and Paint only, Local 900 in Region 1A to stand up and strike. These 3 units are being called to stand up and walk out on strike at midnight tonight.
Yeah, if you notice, to get back into this grand strategy here, the only one for Ford, because Ford has a different assembly model. Their finished product is usually done at a slightly different part of either the same facility or it gets moved to a separate facility for final paint and final assembly. That means that all of the labor cost and all of the material cost is still in effect for all of these vehicles, all the way up to the last coat of paint and a couple screw turns. Okay. And they can't sell a car, truck, van, whatever, unless it gets its final paint job and gets its couple last screw turns. They can't sell it. So they're spending all of these millions and millions of dollars right now to produce these vehicles that, because of, I think it's just a couple thousand workers at one plant, that entire process is halted. They can't fucking get them out. They can't get them out to the dealerships to sell them to make their coin. So by a couple thousand workers at Ford going on strike, they've halted, tens of thousands of profitability for the company off of the labor of tens of thousands of Ford workers at adjoining plants. So that's the scale at which this is a surgical strike. This is like the union equivalent of drone warfare, like we're going in and we're hitting this one exact target and it takes out the entire infrastructure for the companies. And it's honestly genius.
It absolutely is, brother. And for the folks that haven't been following the strikes, I know we also have quite a bit of people that are from an international audience. Can you tell us a bit about how it is that we got here? What have been the conditions that led the UAW to this process of trying to negotiate a contract? What are the things that the contract is asking for? How long have the Big Three had to meet the demands? And what have sort of the answer back from the companies been? And so basically give us like a comprehensive yet brief view of how it is that we got here so that it could situate where we're at and perhaps the trajectory of where we might be going.
Yeah, absolutely. So to start off, the General Motors in the first 2 quarters of this year have made $3.2 billion in net profits. So that's after all of their costs, everything else. 3.2 billion for General Motors in 6 months. Okay, these are record numbers. Stellantis, that's the people who own Chrysler, Fiat, a couple other things. They made $12.1 billion in net profits once again. So this is insane. Ford is coming in at 1.9 billion, but that's triple what they made in the previous 2 quarters. To put that in perspective, so these are record profits that are going down here, and none of that is going to increase in payouts for workers. It's not going to increase wages. It's not going for anything like that. What it's going to is stock buyback schemes for the shareholders and increased dividends and CEO pay increases. That's what it's going to. It's not going to make. It's not going in even to increase the productivity of the plants. It's not going into investment or anything like that. It's just all about the shareholders. It's all going to Wall Street. None of this is going to help anything but Wall Street. It's all dog shit, honestly. So that's the slap in the face. But that's also just how business is done. You know how it is in this country. So we have that going on, and then we have going from there. We've seen the actual the real wages, the real purchasing power of the workers at these plants. It's diminished over the years. So we got this pulled up here. So the starting rate in 2007 was $19.60. Okay, in modern equivalency of what that purchasing power would look like, it would look like $28.68. So a worker starting out at General Motors now, they're making $18.04. So it's not even just that their purchasing power is less. It's just straight up they're making less. It's a $10 gap in their purchasing power in the past 16 years. And across the board with their pension, with they've introduced tiers at UAW, which means that workers are paid different rates even though they're doing the same job. All sorts of shit. It's a divisive environment where management is using this tier system to pit worker against worker and weaken the union. And on top of that, using it as an excuse to drive starting wages down to the bottom by, in previous contract negotiations since 2007, just going ahead and only offering pay increases to the top tiers, which represent a very small minority of the workers at the plant. So they're having to spend less on labor costs, and while it's a race to the bottom, as Sean Fain says, for the real wages of the workers in these plants. They're making what used to be a middle class job where you could support a family on into something that's I mean, in my area here in the St. Louis area, you could make $17.50 as a gas station attendant, and you're making $18.04 at a company that's got $12.1 billion in profits and in net profits in 2 months. It's a slap in the face. It's disgusting. So none of the money, it's just these deals were predicated on trickle down economics type mentality, and obviously that's been a failure. We all know that's been a failure. That's why we're Marxists. Marx has been saying this is a failure since before Reagan. So it's just nonsense, and this is how business is being done at the big three. So Sean Fain, he came in. He ran on a ticket for the union of getting rid of corruption and trying to cut down on bureaucracy and everything else. He ran on he got elected from the rank and file. The rank and file were very active in getting him elected. He climbed the ranks from being a guy on the assembly line all the way to the top position now as the president. When he entered the negotiations with the big three, it used to be customary that before the negotiations took place, there was a closed door meeting with the president of the UAW and the CEOs of the big three. He has done away with that tradition. He has called it out. He has said that's bullshit. There will be no closed door meetings. You will meet with the National Organizing Committee and myself, and we will have a deal or we will go on strike. And he has stuck to his word. He is proven to be a man of principles. He said off the bat, when he got elected, I think this was back in November last year, maybe January, maybe this is when he was getting elected, right after he got elected. He said, we're going to take the fight to the big three this year. And he is stuck to that. That's what he's doing. Now we're at the strike point. It's great to see he's actually stood up for what he ran on. He might be the only he's not a politician, he's a labor leader, but he seems to be a bit more trustworthy than most politicians in this country, because he's actually done what the fuck he said he's going to do, which is great. It's admirable. So moving on to that, we've got the workers' demands. So this is what the bargaining committee has decided with Sean Fain to go ahead and bring to the company. So this is what's being discussed. So not only do they, there's a lot of economic demands that basically he wants a $10 or more pay increase right off the bat. He wants to close that gap that has been created in the purchasing power of the workers in the UAW. He wants that closed. He wants an elimination of the tier system, 100% gone, clean off the slate, no more tiers. No more dividing up the workers. No more some guys getting paid doing the same job for more for no goddamn reason. And so moving into some of the more radical demands on this list, we got the right to strike over plant closures. So let's say General Motors decides that this factory that's the lifeblood of this small community out in Iowa or something, it's only employs 500 workers, but that's half the population of a town. Well, they don't think that's very profitable anymore. They're only making 300% profit, so instead of 320% profit. So they want to shut it down. They want to do what they did during NAFTA, which is take all the machinery out, box it up, ship it to Mexico, open up a factory in Mexico, and exploit the hell out of the Mexican workers. They are paid cents on the dollar compared to Americans. Take those jobs, place them overseas. They want the UAW wants the right to go ahead and say, no, you can't do that. If you do that, we want a nationwide strike. We want to go on strike. We want to say we're going to strike in Detroit if you want to close a plant in Iowa. And if you think that's still profitable, well, I guess you can go ahead, but you ain't going to get any cars made in Detroit or Wentzville or anywhere else anymore. So he's actually trying to save American manufacturing jobs and save this industry, which has historically provided some of the best blue collar jobs that have ever existed. So it's kind of ironic because he's trying to save the industry, but he's trying to stop the greedy capitalist CEOs and everybody else who keep screwing us over at the same time. So it's kind of interesting. So there's some other things they want to pretty much get done with the temp worker program right now, due to a number of reasons, but also really because of COVID, extremely, that the companies have taken advantage of not hiring members into the union. They just hire them as temps and keep them for years and years. There are people who have been temps for 6+ years, 10 years, all types of horror stories. And temps don't get pay increases. They get paid basically, that $18 an hour, and that's it. They could be working there 10 years. They only get paid $18 an hour, or it's whatever wage that they were hired on that. So if they were hired 10 years ago and that wage was fucking $15 or something, that's all they're getting paid right now to work. And they don't get any benefits. They don't get a pension. They don't get they don't get like a really good health benefits that the union has. They don't have any of that stuff. And they're at will. They're not covered under the contract. If GM decides they want to fire them, they have the right to do so. So it's very fucked up what's happening to these temp workers. They've been fighting for years trying to get into the union, but the GM has not allowed them to do so. They've offered no path for individuals to move from temp status to union status. And there are people who are working in the same plant, people who are temps for 10 years, but somebody else comes along and they become a temp. They go from temp to management in 90 days. So it's incorrect. It's just wrong. It's just abuse and mistreatment of these workers. And the union's trying to fight on their behalf to try and eliminate pretty much any use of temps. They're going to say what I've heard has been discussed is like 90 days. And after 90 days, you have to offer them a job into the union and a permanent position, which is great, which is what we want to see. And Sean Fain has been talking about the idea of a 4-day work week, going to a 32-hour work week, and if they want to do 5, because right now a lot of plants are doing 5, 6, 7-day weeks. It's hell. People are working 70, 80-hour weeks. They don't have any time with their family. Vacation time. If they're temps, they don't have vacation time, and a lot of them are temps. All types of stuff. So we're trying to have a situation where they have the opportunity to work people to 40, 50, 60-hour weeks like they are now, but that's going to be a whole bunch more overtime, a whole day's worth more of overtime if they go to a 32-hour work week. So it de-incentivizes the company from doing these like critical status plants and stuff like that, where people have to work 7-day weeks on end for weeks at a time and have no days off, which is what critical status is. It de-incentivizes this because it means that they're paying even more in overtime wages and penalties and everything else. So this is all going to quality of life for the workers. It's not just meaningless contract work, stuff, and it actually translates to a significant quality of life increase, for the workers. And they've proven that they're willing to stand up and do the fight. There was a vote for if they wanted to strike or not. It was a 97% yes vote to strike across the entire union. So that's where we're at. People are fed up and they're ready to fight for what they think they deserve. So we got to support that, and we love to see it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I wanted to ask too about some of the leftist response to this, because there have been accusations from people on Twitter and from our favorite Trotskyite website, the World Socialist website, that the the stand-up strike is a capitulation to the company and a capitulation to the CEOs. And if Sean Fain was serious about getting demands for the rank and file, he would have called an all-out strike. So here this says the decision by President Sean Fain and the rest of UAW leadership to limit strike action to just 2.5 assembly plants is illegitimate and a betrayal of the will of the rank and file. Workers must organize now to overturn this, unite the rank and file, and build support in every plant to launch an all-out strike. So that's from the World Socialist website calling on the rank and file workers to do something different. What's your response to that? And do you think, from my perspective, and obviously I'm not in UAW or deeply involved in the labor movement or the unions, but a lot of these leftists I see on Twitter and elsewhere criticizing the strike and condemning the strike and claiming that it's a capitulation. I feel like they just don't know what they're talking about. They're not involved in the labor movement. They don't understand the strategy behind the stand-up strike. So they just jump to condemning it and criticizing it. But yeah, curious to hear your take.
Yeah. I think that, first off, this just sounds like jibber jabber trot crap. Yeah, that's just really what it comes down to. This is all just sloganeering instead of fucking theory. They want to sit here and say we're the most radical and we got our glasses clean today and we see that there's something that we need to clutch our goddamn pearls about. And it's all nonsense. They're not there. I'm not going to say none of them, because I know for a fact there's a lot of trots in the Teamsters Union, but they're not tuned in. They're not embedded in the working class, like actual currents of the union. They don't know what the hell the rank and file wants. The rank and file voted for Sean Fain because they believe in him. That's the reality of it. It's a fair vote. It's a clean vote. They also hurled accusations to cover their ass in this shit, saying that all of the votes were illegitimate for the UAW and everything else, which is just straight up wrecker shit. You want the federal government to come in and start investigating your unions and telling your unions what they can and can't do and all this weird shit. Yeah, okay. What are you, FBI plant? That's what you sound like. So Trots, I already got a bad taste in my mouth whenever it comes to labor shit. But the just addressing the actual
Can
thoughts.
I say something real quick?
Yeah, go ahead.
Because it says Will Leham is a UAW and ran for president, almost winning. I don't know what you call almost winning. He received 4,777 votes out of 103,495 votes in
Yeah.
total.
So he got
And
4% of the vote. It's almost
Yeah, well,
winning
he got
he
that.
less
worked
than,
harder than you
around
shit.
4%.
He would have won. He would have won, guys, if he just wasn't, so mistreated or some dumb shit, or the election wasn't rigged and blah 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 blah. No,
The Stalinist feign.
yeah, if the Stalinist CPUSA didn't come in and do some fuck shit with the Comintern, I mean, Will Lehman would be the president of the UAW. Fuck out of here. No, Sean Fain's the elected president of the UAW for a reason. He got the vast majority of the votes for a reason. This is not some conspiracy fucking bullshit. Okay. Um,
All that,
and
sorry, all that tells me is that this could be sour grapes from Will Lehman too.
that's all
He's
this
mad that he
is.
lost the election, so it's like let's throw shit at the strike idea that Sean Fain came up with.
Yeah. And I've already gone through talking about all of the great things about why how this strike strategy really works. I don't really feel like I need to get really much deeper into the surgical strategy of this. Only the other thing I would say is that they're accomplishing with striking these key plants to completely fuck up the company's days and their profitability without draining the strike fund in any significant way. 3 plants out of hundreds. If they did an all-out strike against the big 3, there has been corruption in the UAW in the past. Sean Fain is trying to fight that, but they have past UAW presidents have gone in and fucked with the strike fund. That's a fact. I think it's actually a court-proven fact in some instances. So the strike fund is not as strong as it should be. If you want to go ahead and strike, however many, I think it's 150,000 workers in this country, and you have to pay all of them through the strike fund, because that's what we do during a strike. We don't just stick the workers out to dry on goddamn unemployment line. We use the money from that they've been paying in dues to help them keep them afloat financially. That's why we have strike funds. But that strike fund would be gone very fast. So we should drain the strike fund and then have to go back with our hat in our hand to the bosses over at Stellantis, Ford, and GM and say, hey, look, we're out of money, so I guess we got to come back to the table. I don't think that's a position of strength. I think that's probably the weakest position you could probably put the union in. So let's do this surgical strike mentality, which and not even talking about all the other benefits, but just the pure economics of it, that the union can then keep that fight going almost indefinitely, months and months and months, because you still have money coming in through the dues of the other membership to cover the cost of the guys that are striking, to increase the quality of living through this contract for all of them. So they're not having to drain the strike fund pretty much overnight, and they can keep mobilizing these guys to have more involvement within the union. This is great for union morale as well. Having these constant rallies and practice pickets and everything else, just because they're not on strike, they're actually talking more not before the strike than they are when they would actually be striking. So it just kind of is like, none of this makes any sense once you think about it for 2 minutes, or have actually been involved in unions. And I feel like, yeah, this article is written for a bunch of stupid trot college kids who've never actually been to a picket line, never actually been involved in a workplace, and have no goddamn idea what they're talking about. That's the target audience. Because if you talk to somebody like me who is involved in union politics, who is a working class guy who operates in a union, the strategy makes so much goddamn sense. I don't know why we weren't doing it 20 years ago.
That's such a good point, especially the point about the morale, which is something that I would even say that from what we can tell online, it seems to be elevating the morale of the working class as a whole because of the solidarity we've seen from other groups. But I want to give you a chance to provide a counter argument to this person who was the same one that brought up the comment.
I talked about this before it was even brought up. I said Wentzville was on a layoff for a week before the strike, and then they brought him back for a week. It's because they have parts shortages, because they have actual logistical issues within their company, which are further being hamstrung because of this whole situation with the with how UAW is doing these strikes. It's going to further fuck up their logistics, and there's going to be more layoffs that are not that are strike related in reality, but it's not because they're on strike. And I would also like to say that in the current contracts of the UAW, when it comes to GM, Ford, and Stellantis, workers receive 70% of their pay when they're on layoff. So go ahead, lay them off. They're only losing 20 to 30% of the pay. It's actually, if they lay these workers off, they're actually receiving more money in what's contractually obligated, the money the company pay out to them during a layoff, than if they were to go on strike, because the strike fund doesn't cover 70% of their pay. So they're actually better off being laid off by the companies right now as part of this whole strike wave. And it saves the union money as well, because the union's not paying out of the strike fund. The companies are required to pay for the cost of the 70% of their wages that they would be earning during the layoff period. Every single year, they have a layoff. And in Wentzville, we've been laid off 3 times this year. And every single time during that, the UAW membership gets paid 70% of their paycheck to sit at home and not do anything. And that comes from the company. Once again, that doesn't come from the union. The union isn't losing money from that. It is just GM has to pay these guys, because that's what's been negotiated, and that's what's currently on the books for the contract. So yeah, if GM decides to have a hissy fit and lay off all their guys because they were anticipating a strike and it didn't come, and they want to lay off some other guys at different plants, good on them. They're going to be paying these guys to sit at home.
Dang. Well, Trot's wrecked. I don't know what else to say.
It's over. Call me Ramon Mercader, because I just did him in.
No, that's beautifully said, man. It's kind of sad to see people have these lies imbued into their head, such as the Keenan fellow, which seems to think that the workers are being paid from the strike fund when they get fired, and you're showing how that's clearly not the case, and how in some instances that's
just get a copy of the UAW's contract. I mean, it's in there, man. It's easily verifiable.
That's why it's so helpful to have someone like you, though, Kyle, who's got your nose in this and knows the details in and out, so you can refute this kind of propaganda, really. I don't know what else to call it.
I mean, that's someone's salty they lost. Get over it. I don't 4% of the vote. He almost won, guys.
So I wanted to bring up some of the videos of people on the scene, just so that we can see what's going on. This is... Let's see. This is a worker talking about the conditions and how they're only getting every other year a pay raise of 45 cents an hour, which, if you look at inflation, it means that real wages are going down.
We get a raise of every other year, 45 cents. 45 cents. Him, me, him, Oscar. That's our raise. 45 cents every other year. Not every year, every other year.
The retirees out here can barely pay for their prescriptions. After they just gave 30 years, 40 years of their life, they can barely put food on the table. You got people working in these plants that can't even buy the trucks and the cars that they build.
1, 2, 3, 4, we don't take it anymore. 1, 2, 3, 4, we don't take it anymore. We've had a 6% raise over the last 4 years. The high wigs or big wigs or whatever you want to call them, they've gained 40%, which is crazy.
The way the system is built right now, it's not built for the middle class and the lower people to win. It's not, and if we don't do it right now, your kid's gonna be in trouble.
We get a raise.
That's beautifully said. That shows that part of the struggle is intergenerational too. They have in mind, how the hell is the world going to look for our kids and our grandkids if we don't stand up now and fight? There's a few other videos that I wanted to show, but do you guys have any comments on that?
Yeah, Sean Fain actually says, like, this is our generation's like greatest struggle. Like he's had that slogan going for over a month now, and he couldn't be more right, honestly.
Here's a Sean Fain at the. Oh, go ahead, Eddie. Sorry.
I was just saying agreed. Sorry, and I was muted earlier. But
This is Sean Fain, CNN, interviewing him at the picket line.
It's official. They are officially on strike. We've got Gabe Cohen in Wayne, Michigan right now. You're hearing from Sean Fain, the UAW president.
And they want to call it. They got the whole thing backwards.
What would you say to the CEOs of these auto companies that say the union has not been acting in good faith, that there were delays? What do you make of that?
Let's talk about what good faith is. They've had our economic demand for 6 weeks. We've told them from day one, we expect a bargain now, not wait till the end. They waited till last week. We had to file unfair labor practice charges on 2 companies to get them to come to the table. So they waited till the last week to want to get down to business. Shame on them, and what they're saying is complete BS.
You heard the CEO of Ford say that it would bankrupt them if they met your demands. What do you think of that?
I think it's a joke. You know what? They could double our pay right now. Labor, the cost of labor that goes into a vehicle is 5% of the vehicle. They could double our wages, and they could not raise the price of vehicles. They would still make billions of dollars. It's a lie, like everything else that comes out of their mouth.
The strategy is 3 facilities. What impact do you think that could make on the auto industry as a whole across this country?
We'll find out. You know what? And it's going to keep on building if they don't come to the table for our members.
More facilities are more facilities going to feel this? Are more facilities going on strike?
If they don't take care of our members, they will.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I love it. I love how they're not telling them either. Like they might. We're not going to tell you which one till it hits you, though.
Yeah, they're not even announcing to the local leadership until the day of. So everything's under wraps. It's all hush hush. There's no possibility of a leak. Nothing. So they're hitting them, blindsiding them left and right. That's what the plan is, anyways.
Yeah, I fucking love this guy, man. He speaks like an old militant socialist union head, and he reminds me of the best parts of the American tradition of the socialist labor movement, the old CIO.
Right.
And it's extremely exciting. It couldn't be more fitting for the time. But look at this. This is what the American population feels about the strike. This is from a poll. It asks, which side do you sympathize with more? And 75% of Americans said that they sympathize more with the UAW workers than they do with the auto companies. Only 19% said they sympathize with the auto companies. So it seems like the solidarity you're seeing is extremely generalized in the American population. The vast majority of the American people, the vast majority of working class people in the country, which is also the vast majority of the American people, are siding with the auto workers and the UAW in this fight back against, a company that's making trillions while their workers are immiserated and poor and poorer every day.
Right. Yeah, I mean the American working class is waking up. It's just I feel like a broken record because I say this a lot on here, but it's the leftists that are lagging behind. I mean, we got to have the world socialists, whatever, sitting here criticizing what workers are doing with their own 2 hands, with their own brains. They didn't get that 97% approval for a strike because they don't know what they're doing, and that's just what I can't stand in some of this discourse.
And this is also we've been speaking about the interconnections of these various struggles in our history, the labor movement, the socialist struggle, and how Fain seems to embody a lot of the best parts of this militant history. And here he is quoting the legendary Malcolm X.
It's times like these when we all need to ask ourselves some hard questions. As Malcolm X once stated, if a person tells you they want freedom, but in the next breath will tell you what they won't do to get it, that person doesn't believe in freedom. We have to be willing to stand up and get our demands by any means necessary. So how far are you willing to go? Are you willing to go the distance? Are you willing to stand in solidarity with people you don't know across the entire country? Are you willing to stand up for what you deserve, for what your family deserves, for what Kokomo deserves, for what the entire working class deserves? It's time for the UAW to stand up. It's times like these.
I listen to this and I see the reception from the American people, and it makes me think that if if something like a Labor Party was done, or a workers' party, a people's party was done at a general scale that centered itself on the basic demands of working people, things related to the conditions of working people. In terms of foreign policy, just general anti-intervention, anti-war. No working class person is in favor of war. It's their sons and their daughters that are sent out to lose limbs and lives fighting people whom they have more in common with than the elites who sent them there. So, if there was some form of a political vehicle like that, I have no doubt in my mind that the vast majority of Americans would absolutely jump all over it. The vast majority of Americans are not either in the Democratic or Republican Party, and the ones that are also dissatisfied with those parties. So, do you see any potential for moving forward for these struggles ever, or ever? But do you see any potential for these struggles taking a political form in the near future?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of difficult because we have laws in place in this country where, you can't strike for political reasons and stuff like that. However, you know, obviously the unions spend millions of dollars lobbying to try and strengthen labor laws and try to defeat, like in Missouri a couple of years ago, they tried to ram right to work down the throats of the Missouri voter. And the unions were instrumental in destroying that campaign from the billionaire lobbyists and CEOs, lobbyists. And so, like, we spend a lot of money, politically speaking, but we don't really get what we pay for most of the time. We spend a lot of time with that money chasing our tail, fighting things like right to work instead of actually furthering a political agenda that is pro-worker. And I wouldn't say that's all the time. It depends on state and local issues and stuff like that. But I do think 100% that labor would be better off if they were able to have a third party that was a labor party. And I think there's people who are more and more receptive to that idea. Sean Fain, when he originally announced the beginning of negotiations with the Big Three, he was speaking rather critically of the Democrats, who traditionally the UAW backs through and through, because the Republicans won't play ball with them at all. So they're forced to do the lesser of two evils sort of things. To as far as trying to enact anything politically, they have to go with the Democrats, and the Democrats have known this, and they have them over a barrel. So, I mean, and we saw what was going on with the Democrats, obviously, with the railroad workers and everything else that they've been doing, just completely screwing over organized labor left and right whenever they can get away with it. So, yeah, I think 100% labor's money would be much better spent on itself, promoting a labor party. But are we at that point yet? I'm not entirely sure. I think big things like what's going on right now with the Big Three, I think that's going to be indicative of the way the winds are going to be changing as far as how labor does its business in this country moving forward. And I think if we see success here, I think that eventuality becomes more and more likely. It's just a matter of time, honestly. The unions have to evolve in this country. That's why we have new strike strategies and everything else going on. But we also need to evolve politically, and we're also going to see that as a new generation of workers get involved in the trade unions, because they're tired of the status quo two-party duopoly, more so than any other generation before them.
For sure. It reminds me of when Carlos released his recent book, The Purity Fetish and the Crisis of Western Marxism. There were a lot of people, not a lot of people, but one of the criticisms I saw was that the book overestimates the revolutionary conditions that exist in the U.S. People don't think that we're close to any kind of political revolution. It's like, listen to how the working class is talking. Listen to how they talk about the government. Listen to how they talk about the bosses. From the perspective of these leftists who spend too much time on Twitter, probably they're like, the working class isn't in line with me on social values, or they don't have liberal/democratic social views, so they're so far from revolution. But you talk to, a lot of working class Trump supporters, and they sound like revolutionaries when they're talking about the U.S. government. It's like you just need to unify them, raise their political consciousness and have a party that actually speaks to them. Have a party that's not obsessed with, social values or social policy. Have a party that's focused on labor and what's in the interests of labor and moving forward from that, moving forward from a position of class struggle and, the potential to unify Americans, on class lines politically is there, and it's growing and developing every single day, in my view.
Yeah, I mean, I see it on the ground all the time, and it's just the class antagonism still exists, and it's heightened more than ever. But the left has, by and large, just abandoned or relegated class to the back of the room. When really it needs to be at the forefront. It is the primary contradiction, and it is the what? How does Marx say it? Hitherto all existing society is a history of class struggle. I mean, that's no different. It's no less true now than it was when Marx wrote it. So it's just the left in general is missing its window to make itself socially relevant to the working class in this nation. And we'll see if the train leaves the station without them or not, to be quite frank.
Yeah, and there are some groups that are trying to do this, but we should also try to think through what are some of the fetters that prevent these engagements from being more successful. But it's not a cakewalk either, right? These things are difficult. They take time, and there's a lot of work that has to be put in for reward to be seen. But it's definitely it's time for the left to get their shit together, because the working class is absolutely ready. And it's not just a reality in our country. It seems to be a reality in all of the dominant so-called developed capitalist countries that are all experiencing the same thing because of the globalized character of the system. The richest owners of the largest monopolies getting richer and richer and richer, a political class that doesn't represent them, a media that lies to them, and the vast majority of people getting poorer, getting more precarious in their existence, more desperate, sometimes indebted. That's something that our working class specifically has. It's a historically new form of super exploitation, where we have the primary exploitation at the point of production, but also that thing that Marx calls the secondary exploitation that takes the form of a debt, a debt slavery that the working class people are forced into. So, the conditions couldn't be any riper, and we have a world to win, and we also have a world to lose if we don't fight. So. A whole lot of stuff is on the line, and we got to get our shit together. Whenever I see these things that pop up online, and it's just people fighting over meaningless things, and removing their eyes from the prize and removing their analysis from what the principal contradiction is just pisses me off so much. And it's the same people. They come from different tendencies, but some of them call themselves Maoists or Marxist-Leninist Maoist or Mao Zedong or whatever they call it. And it's like, do you know what guy it is that you're following? The person that develops the analysis from, the universality of contradictions to the particularity of contradiction that gives us the concept of principle and non-principle contradiction, and antagonistic and non-antagonistic contradictions, and contradictions amongst the people, which was actually also already in Lenin, who the friends of the people are, what are the contradictions that play there. But, so it's a really exciting time for anyone who considers their life's purpose to be fighting for a new world.
Absolutely. I mean, it's socialism or barbarism. There's no third option, We have a monumental task ahead of us, and sitting here making things even harder on ourselves is obviously not going to get anything accomplished. So it's just crazy to me, like how some of these bad actors are on Twitter and elsewhere. I cannot wrap my head around how I don't truly think any of them think it's productive. I don't even understand how it could be enjoyable. I don't know. It's just weird to me. And yeah, I think I think most people who use the Maoist label, I think Mao would have some very harsh criticisms of their actions.
My copy of the Little Red Book, that in the margins, it's written maybe 50 times, Mao would hate modern Maoists. I read something Mao said, about adapting to material conditions and not falling into dogma. And I'm like, this is what all the modern people calling themselves Maoists do in the West. Not all of them, but a lot of them,
The very vocal ones.
Right.
The representatives of the movement, if you will.
And it's a lot of these, right. It's a lot of these people who, like I was saying, like the people criticizing Carlos's book for overestimating the objective conditions, they just don't like working people because they don't have the same social values as the Maoists.
Oh.
So then they what they say is, I support a cultural revolution then, so we can take these people and make them think the right way.
I love just the trope of taking 1984 and like making it what actually communism is about, supposedly. Like, what the fuck? Like, I really want to just like brainwash a bunch of working class people to be exactly take the round peg and make it into the square hole as much as possible. It's tantamount to actually achieving a revolution in this country. You have to make everybody a goddamn weirdo, to be quite frank. I don't get it. I don't get it at all. It's the most immaterial, like idealist fantasy bullshit. The revolutionary potential doesn't come from if they understand gender theory or something. It doesn't come from that. It comes from their specific class characteristics and the proximity of that class to the means of production. And what do they understand that? Do they understand that being the working class means that they are part of the most the part of the class that has the most revolutionary capability of any other class ever existing in all of human history? And if they understand that if they were to take that and use that they could fundamentally change society for the better for themselves as a class. That is what measures their revolutionary potential. It's not if they fucking vote blue no matter who or whatever the fuck. I'm so tired of the Twitter left. I'm so tired of all of that nonsense, because it's not even that it's short-sighted. It's just it's not even looking at the same thing. They don't view, the American worker views themselves as a temporarily embarrassed millionaire or whatever. Sure. A lot of them do. That's rapidly changing in mentality. What's not changing in mentality is that leftists don't see working class people as the eventual vanguard of
the revolutionary agent.
Yeah, they don't see themselves as they don't see the working class as potentially being revolutionary in any capacity. They don't see the working class as being able to actually go out and form a vanguard party and take the fight to the capitalists and actually make a better world for themselves. No, they'd fall into defeatism, and they fall into this weird leftist bullshit that they get taught in college about that the working class is actually just a bunch of soon to be black and brown shirt thugs that are going to come and smash up your local Starbucks or something. You know, like that's the actual mentality that most like terminally online leftists have about the working class. They are fearful of them, and they view them as some eventual vanguard for a fascist takeover of the country. And it's disgusting, honestly. It's not only just that it's wrong, like from an analysis perspective, it actually goes beyond that. And really, all it does is tell the working class people that no, actually, everybody's a classist, including the left. That like nobody fucking trusts the working class. Nobody actually gives a shit about us at all, even when they pretend to give a shit about us by using some fancy words about Marx and everything else, because they don't fundamentally understand Marx at all, and they don't actually give a shit to fundamentally understand anything. They just want to continue to make nice little hashtags on Twitter and nice little slogans and stuff to continue to have a bunch of infighting and a bunch of performative bullshit. So yeah,
Part of their identity. That's central to a lot of
exactly.
how they treat what they're doing. It's just an identity thing, and it's about building, creating their profile as activists, and nothing would tarnish them more than actually winning socialism and having the working class come to power, because then they're no longer this fringe countercultural group that is the center point of what their identity is. And that's not everyone, of course. It's not everyone. These objective conditions that are producing this in the labor movement have brought people to the left, and there's a lot of people that are critical of these institutional structures that have perpetuated a lot of the same for the last few decades. So again, we're not making a blanket attack here, but these tendencies do exist, and in many ways they're dominant in some of the key institutions of the left, and they're being combated against. And it's extremely exciting. But I wanted to bring up another one of the, I think, central labor leaders in our country, Chris Smalls, someone who has defied the purity fetish of the left and organized Staten Island, of course, also known as Trump Island. And, he didn't do that on the basis of asking his coworkers, hey, do you agree with me on this checklist of things that I need you to purely agree on me with so that I can approach you and not call
Are
you a
you
fat?
worthy enough? Are you worthy enough?
Are you
That's
pure
really
enough?
all it
Right?
is. Yeah.
Right, as the monastery purity fetish left approaches politics. But he's someone who organized on the basis of, hey, we're getting screwed by the same guy. Let's fight together for the same things that we want objectively as people in the same job and with the same interests from the same class. But he seems to be in France. He's working with a General Congress of Trade Unions, the CGT. And, this is someone who also, I think, represents a very advanced part of the working class, not just because of, how he's able to focus on what the principal contradiction is and organize on the basis of class and all these other things, but also because, he seems to always have like an international dimension at play in his analysis. Especially after his trip to Cuba, he's very pro-Cuba. Now he's standing in solidarity with the workers in France, who, of course, are getting shafted in many similar ways by Macron, as we have been here by our neoliberal overlords and elites and parasites. So, it's an extremely exciting time in the labor movement. And here he is, with the daughter of Julian Assange. Stella Assange, who follows us, by the way. She's pretty awesome. Yeah.
For sure. It's good to see. I mean, Chris Small sort of represents a different section of the working class, but yeah, like we said, the working class all across the country and all these different sections is starting to see themselves as a class again and get organized and demand union representation. I mean, it's wild the amount of anti-union propaganda that's been pumped out and the amount that unions have been crushed over the last 40 years. I mean, 10 years ago, you talk to the average person about unions and, you know, they'd been brainwashed by a lot of union propaganda, you know, oh, well, I don't want to pay union dues. You know, I
Yeah.
just want to take all the benefits that the union fought for and not pay my dues, you know, and that's because, I mean, there's all the, I remember I searched unions on YouTube a while back, and the first thing that comes up is, who's that Fox News propagandist, John something or other. I can't think of his name, but the first video that pops up is him doing 10 minutes of anti-union propaganda, how unions are bad for business and therefore bad for America. And, you know, people aren't buying this shit anymore. People are looking at the cost of living go up and wages go down and, you know, company profits going up. It's like bullshit. You know, if unions weren't good for the worker, then why are the companies and the bosses spending so much money and effort trying to crush unions, trying to put out union propaganda? I mean, that's all you have to ask yourself. So, you know, it's good to see people aren't buying the lies anymore. Because that's all it is. It's the bourgeoisie has to lie to keep us subservient. You know, the truth is on our side.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it's when I'm organizing, you always run into things like that with the dues thing is always so funny to me because it's I think it's 2.5% is like what I pay in dues as far as but it's like a fixed amount. So I pay $16 a week in dues, which comes down to roughly about 20 minutes of my work week. So and if we want to compare what I get out of paying that $16 a week to what I get out of for paying taxes, I think I might be getting a bit more out of my union than I am the bombs being dropped on Russian trenches in Ukraine. So I don't know. It kind of seems like I don't really have a problem with paying my $16 a week union dues. It's just kind of silly to me and always has been. It's like, I don't know. It's just a silly thing that like people always think about whenever they're thinking about unions and stuff. And it's just when they have the propaganda for it, it's always that's like the highlight of like the Walmart like anti-union film like talks about how the union's gonna take your money and like that's like their big focal point. And it's like they'd be taking like $10 a week, dude. Like it's like a Netflix subscription. Like get out of here.
Right. For all the
So-
benefits that you get, you know, they're like in Wisconsin where my dad's a teacher, part of the teacher strikes that went on a while back was they made it so you can opt out of dues when they were going after the unions and people.
Yeah.
You know, now all these teachers opt out of the dues selfishly, and it, you know, my dad would never say anything, but I know it pisses him off. He's like, you guys are reaping all the rewards. You know,
Yep.
the union's the reason that you're able to go to the doctor and not leave with a $3,000 bill. You know,
That's a big
but you're
part
not gonna
of
pay your dues.
yeah, that's a big part of right to work legislation actually. It's when a state is right to work, that is how unions have to operate. Is you can only voluntarily be part of the union. You don't have a union shop. As in, if you work there as a full-time employee, you're required to be represented by the union. They don't. Right to work states don't have that, and that's why the Republicans push for right to work because they're backed by the national bourgeoisie in this country, which is a lot of them are the manufacturers who directly hate unions. And I mean, obviously, all capitalists hate unions, but the manufacturing capitalists especially hate unions. So they've that's why they pushed this right to work legislation in a lot of states. That's why, like I was talking about with Missouri a couple of years ago, we had right to work on the ballot and we were able to get it defeated. But it's always a struggle, and it always takes millions and millions of dollars to fight that sort of thing. And it's the number one way to completely destroy your state economy. So, you know, that's how it's done though. And that's a big reason why they do it is it completely destroys the union's ability to expand and organize new shops. And a big part of it, once again, is the shops that they do have organized now. People can just not contribute any money to the local unions at all. Continue to get their whatever their current contract is, but next contract time, a lot of them will be decertified and everything else. So it's just terrible for the unions, and something that we constantly have to be fighting.
Absolutely. Yeah, there was tons of right-wing money from the Koch brothers directly and others in Wisconsin when they went ahead with that anti-union legislation. It was ridiculous. Fox News was focusing all their propaganda on Wisconsin for like a month. They famously posted a video of striking teachers vandalizing something, but then there were palm trees in the background.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know this, but there's not palm trees in the fucking Midwest. So
I remember that video, actually. Yeah, I remember that
then
one.
The strikers they put out all these like plastic inflatable palm trees the next day. It's pretty funny.
That's badass.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm afraid I have to cut things a little short. I have a slight family thing I have to take care of, but I've really appreciated being on, and I appreciate to be back in the future talking more about labor politics. And I'm also hoping for people who want to be involved with the UAW strike that's going on, and as the strikes increase and the number of locations increase, I'm trying to get people organized to try and go out to the strike line and show support and talk with working people, and kind of debunk some of the crazy theories out there about what the rank and file of the UAW actually thinks, by just talking to people. So if anybody watching is interested in that, please get in the Midwestern Marx Discord, and I'll try to hit you up there, and I want to get people organized to go out and get on the strike line and show that solidarity.
Absolutely. And Carlos and I will be joining on the strike line. Hopefully, my plan right now, and Carlos I know wants to join as well if it's possible, in Kyle's location, so we can all be together, and it'd be a chance for you guys to come join us and meet us and show some solidarity. So yeah, if you want to join the Midwestern Marx Discord, patreon.com/MidwesternMarx. If you become a $1 supporter, we'll let you in the Discord for life. We will never kick you out, and you'll be part of that community. And yeah.
So
we hope to perhaps set up some sort of a strike fund or something that we could use for the people that are going to be from our audience heading to these sites, so they can buy pizza, donuts, Gatorade, sodas, and whatever's necessary to keep the morale high, the stomachs happy, and keep the strikers striking. But Kyle, it's been such an absolute pleasure to have you on, to discuss this with you, to have you debunk all the Trotskyite nonsense. Somehow always gets to pick at whatever supposed imperfection they see in the leading parts of the labor movement, to criticize it and position themselves as the left radical opposition. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Maybe they'll write an article about me next. Local Teamster volunteer organizer Kyle Pettis is an absolute sellout bureaucrat or some crazy shit.
Stalinist bureaucrat.
Right. Yeah, we'll see what happens, but it's always a pleasure, guys, and I look forward to the next one. Have a good night.
For sure. You too, Kyle. Thanks so much. All right. Let's go to our next segment then. On Chile, it was recently with the, what was it, Carl? The 50th anniversary? No, it was the 50th anniversary of the coup the other day.
Yeah. Which, by the way, for those that haven't, please do make sure to check out the interview that we did in the Capitalism's Attack on the Soul episode of this past week. It was done by Noah Krashevic, fellow director, and Danny Shaw, professor at the Institute's Marxism School. They did an interview with Pablo Vivanco, who works for Red Stream formerly Redfish, I believe, and he's worked for a bunch of other places, Telesur. He's a great fellow, very extremely knowledgeable, and we talked to him about the 50th anniversary of the 9/11 coup in Chile in 1973, some of its effects. We also talked about Boric and the current situation in Chile and the potential of, the Communist Party, and we treated the issue of Chile and the coup in a quite comprehensive manner, and it was a very insightful discussion. So make sure to check that out if you want to be informed about Chile. And we also have another anniversary today, which I think is it the anniversary of the day that they killed Jara, Victor Jara?
I don't know. I just know that there was a meeting in Chile in celebration of him. It does. International Mag didn't say what it was for, but someone mentioned earlier. Maybe it was his birthday or the anniversary of his death. But a Chilean revolutionary singer was really great, and Vijay Prashad is a big fan of him. Let's see here. Today is the anniversary of the death of the great Chilean singer and poet Victor Jara, tortured and assassinated by the fascists, U.S.-backed fascists, who the U.S. supported all across Latin America in Operation Condor and their other regime change efforts in Latin America. And yeah, Vijay Prashad is a big fan of Victor Jara. We played Victor Jara's song for Vijay when we interviewed him, which was a really nice moment. Yeah, his music is just beautiful.
Also, make sure to check out Massacre at the Stadium. It's a Netflix documentary on Victor Jara's death and all of the other massacres and tortures that the fascist pigs did.
Was he killed by Pinochet in the soccer stadium? Was he one of those? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay. Yeah, for those who don't know, Pinochet, when he came to power, that was one of the first things he did was rounded up a bunch of leftists and socialists, including Jara, I guess, and the kill list had been given to him by the CIA and U.S. intelligence, who had kept tabs on all their enemies in Latin America. And that's what Operation Condor was aimed to do, was to find all of the socialist, communist, progressives, leftists, torture them and kill them to try and wipe socialism from Latin America, which the war pigs and the imperialists have been unable to do. As you can see, socialism is still strong in Latin America. So you failed Richard Nixon and Henry Kissinger and all these disgusting war pigs who tried to wipe socialism out and the revolutionary spirit out of Latin America. And yeah, they're like. By the way,
I don't think this is the right video. It's the video that they sent to us, but they're playing El Pueblo Unido Jamás Será Vencido, which is from Inti Ilmani. It's not a Jara song. There is another one that I can maybe find as we play this, which is during some recent protests in Chile a few years ago, where they were playing Jara, and some of the leading Chilean left-wing artists remade some of the classic songs, Manifiesto, and what's the other one? Well, there's a few very classic jams from Victor Jara.
Yeah.
So we could maybe play this.
Still very cool though. So let's play this quick. Pretty amazing that they got all those people playing guitar in time.
The people united will never be divided. That's the anthem. That's the slogan. It's a terrific slogan. It expresses a great truth that the imperialists know very well. That's why they try in every form they can to divide us as much as they can, because only divided are we weak. United we are strong, and united we can beat any force, any ruling elite that this planet has to offer. But this is some years back, I want to say 2019, 2020, in Chile, and this is El Derecho de Vivir en Paz, the right to live in peace. I believe it was dedicated to Ho Chi Minh from Victor Hara. But let's listen in.
This is the song we played for VJ.
What was that, Eddie?
This is the song we played for VJ with that story I was telling earlier.
Yeah.
The right to live in peace.
Beautiful. It's a right that the U.S. and the imperialists and NATO have never afforded the peoples of the world. And the people are fighting back. In many places, they're winning. In other places, they have yet to win, but they will win. And there will be a day when, in this planet, not one of these parasites walks, and it'll be just working people. No one there to exploit us. No one there to oppress us. No one there to keep us alienated, to keep us working hours on end, separated from our families and from any sort of meaningful activity. The day will come. It will come.
Absolutely. The day will come when we see the people who backed Pinochet and Operation Condor and all these things tried for their crimes. And you won't see folks like Henry Kissinger walking around in suits, or people like George Bush walking around living lives of luxury after committing horrific war crimes and killing and torturing people all around the world in the name of freedom and democracy, which is what we currently have, which is why it's so imperative that we form a revolutionary movement against this imperialist neocon government, because nothing has changed since that time. You know, Joe Biden's been around forever. He's been a manager of empire forever. He was involved in the overthrow of the Libyan government that saw Muammar Gaddafi sodomized to death, and, you know, Libya go from one of the most prosperous countries in Africa to one of the poorest. You know, and then you got Joe Biden and Obama asking people for money to send to Libya. You know, donate to the Obama Foundation and we'll give the money to Libya when there were floods recently that killed 11,000 people. Like, motherfuckers, you created the situation in Libya, and you're billionaires or millionaires. You do something about it. You scumbags. You know, there's no option except the revolutionary option. This system doesn't need to be reformed. These neocons can't be reformed. They need to be thrown out of office, and the working people need to seize power in their place. So,
beautifully said, brother. Do we want to hop on to our next segment of the day? You said you had a few prepared. We also have the RFK attempted assassination.
yeah, let's talk about the attempted assassination on RFK, because this is pretty interesting, and it also relates to the Biden administration with the lack of protection and security that they're giving RFK. So I'll just play my TikTok here because it kind of summarizes things, and then we'll give our analysis. Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy said that there was an assassination scare at his most recent campaign rally. Here is a picture of the man who carried out the assassination attempt. Just kidding. This is actually the guy. But RFK used this opportunity to ask Joe Biden for protection from the Secret Service. pointing out that he is the first
Oh my
president
God.
in history
I almost pissed
White
myself with the
protection
the
to.
Biden thing. Oh my God, put that back. I it's I spit all over my guitar. I hadn't seen this before.
I forgot you hadn't seen it before. Yeah, this is
Oh
Bo
my
Biden,
God.
the guy who did it, or who's suspected. He's still on the run.
Oh Lord, that's a good one.
Kidding. This is actually the guy. But RFK used this opportunity to ask Joe Biden for protection from the Secret Service, pointing out that he is the first presidential candidate in history who the White House has denied protection to. Which is crazy. What the heck, Joe Biden? Are you hoping that this man gets killed? That is quite the campaign strategy. It's also just wild that this would happen to RFK, the nephew of JFK, who was, of course, assassinated. I'm glad that he's still alive and that his security was able to neutralize this threat. Joe Biden should absolutely offer him protection. Democratic presidential candidate. And look
And
at
the
the
son
Joe.
of Bobby Kennedy, who was also assassinated.
Right. And he's the only candidate who's not receiving protection. Look at the Joe Biden simps in the comments. He already has security. Okay, well, he's still the only candidate who isn't being offered security by the Secret Service. Just because you're a candidate doesn't mean you get protection. Yes, you do. The other candidates are offered protection by the government, and he's not. Like, they just fucking lie, dude. They have their guy. Joe Biden is their guy, and these liberals will just lie and smear anyone who says the truth about him. It's so infuriating. Like, what kind of, grow a backbone? And even this, you can't talk about a candidate being almost being assassinated without the liberals being like, but don't blame Biden. Don't throw any criticism at Biden. You're helping Trump. Shut the hell up. I'm so done with it. I don't even like RFK that much, but he doesn't deserve to be assassinated. And it's crazy that the one guy who offers any kind of challenge to Joe Biden, which is not a real challenge because the Democratic primary is rigged, but the biggest challenge to Biden, they're not giving him security when there's a history of assassination attempts against his family and an assassination attempt now against him.
No, it's absurd. And this is the party that is painting itself as the one that is fighting to sustain democracy against this so-called fascist threat that's solely, according to them, rooted in the MAGA Republicans. It's completely absurd. And the fact that some so-called leftists and communists and socialists buy into this is sickening. This is deeply anti-democratic. And this isn't all. You also have Robert Kennedy suing the DNC because of the fact that it's literally not allowing some states it's forcing some states, even if RFK or Williamson or anyone wins those states, they're going automatically to Biden. And I think Iowa's one of them. I forget which. A couple others are a part of them. They already canceled any DNC debates, so there won't be any debates. So it's completely anti-democratic, explicitly so. Before, they used to do their anti-democratic schemes behind closed doors, and you had it in 2016. They cheated Bernie, but it was at least closed doors. They persecuted the guy that exposed the truth, Julian Assange, right? In 2020, it was something that they tried to hide, how it was that Obama was the one that called every candidate, told them to drop out and endorse Biden in order to have Bernie lose. They at least were trying to be a little bit closed door, but now they're just open about the fact we don't want to debate. We don't want any challenger to Biden, and we don't care that 80 or so percent of the registered Democrats and regular American people don't want Biden to run again. We're going to run them. So it's literally the opposite of democratic. If democracy means people in power, this is explicitly showing itself to be not that, to be just what both parties are and what the whole system produces, which is the rule of the elite. So something's got to give. Something's got to give. They're getting sloppy. The elite used to be a lot better at keeping up the narrative that somehow they represented working people, that somehow there was democracy. there's this mask that has been kept up or attempted to be kept up in order to fool people and have them consent to an order that they do not benefit from. But the mask is coming off. They're very explicit, and under the name of fighting fascism, again, they're doing things that are deeply anti-democratic and fascistic.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I don't know. It's you don't want to jump to conclusions, but when RFK is the only major candidate not being protected by the Secret Service, it's like, what does that imply that the Biden administration is trying to do? Are they trying to leave him vulnerable to assassination? I saw some of the Biden simps in the comments there saying that you only get Secret Service protection if you run in the general. That's not true. That is a lie. They made that up because they'll defend Joe Biden reflexively no matter what. All major candidates who raise over $10 million, which RFK is well over that, are supposed to get federal protection. What they're trying to do is say he's not a major candidate. He's not a real threat. He's irrelevant. We don't have to give him protection. And then leaving him vulnerable to assassination. Like, as Carlos said, 2 members of his family have been assassinated. So it's crazy how these liberals will lie. It's the ruling class is sloppy, but they still have their foot soldiers on the ground who are willing to fight tooth and nail for them. And that part's more infuriating than anything for me. But yeah, what do you got? What video is this here, Carlos?
So this is RFK talking about, the thing we mentioned about certain states not being able to go to anyone but Biden. So he says today the DNC met for the Rules and Bylaws Committee meeting, and sadly not much has changed. Our primary is still not free or fair. Meanwhile, our unstoppable campaign continues to build momentum. This is only the beginning of our people-powered movement. Again, you guys know this isn't our guy. We have 1,000,001 criticisms of him. We disagree deeply with his Zionist and racist and apartheid defending positions on Israel. We disagree with him on a host of other stuff. I think perhaps more primarily would be that Israel issue. So this isn't our guy, but again, we have to be consistent. We have to be objective. And if someone is running a presidential campaign, they should be able to run that campaign. It's absurd that people can go ahead and win a state and then it goes to another candidate. I don't know how more undemocratic, even by our shallow standards of treating democracy simply as just elections. I don't know how more undemocratic you can get. But let's listen to RFK say it himself.
Hey, everybody, it's Robert F. Kennedy Jr. here. Well, today the DNC did convene its Rules and Bylaws Committee, but sadly, not much has changed. Our primary is still not free and fair. The DNC is continuing to coerce New Hampshire to bend to the wishes of President Biden's reelection campaign. And if New Hampshire doesn't comply, then the votes of the people of New Hampshire won't count. And of course, there was no mention in the meeting of separating the Biden campaign financially and organizationally from the DNC. The DNC, by its own charter, is supposed to be impartial, but they're not even bothering to pretend. Meanwhile, our campaign is unstoppable. We continue to build momentum. We're getting giant crowds. We have over 200,000 volunteers. The contributions are coming in, and I want to thank all of you for your support. In signing that petition to the DNC, we generated over 30,000 signatures in the last 24 hours. And I got to personally speak to so many of you and hear your concerns for our democracy and for our country. This is only the beginning. We're going to take back our country. We have a people-powered movement, and I want to thank all of you for your continued support, and God bless you all.
I mean, this is also why we support a third-party candidate now. Like, the Democratic primary is rigged. Like, RFK wants to take back the country, sure, but he's also said he's a staunch Democrat through and through, right? He's also trying to take back the Democratic Party. But good luck when it's that rigged against you and when it's that corrupt. I mean, if Bernie wasn't going to do it with the support he had, it's going to be almost impossible. They rig it against you. Carlos and I were both deeply involved with the primary process in 2020. And I mean, the shit we saw, especially on election day in Iowa with the voting app being created by this company called Shadow that was a huge donor to the Pete Buttigieg campaign. And then the app crashes on election night mysteriously. And then Pete declares himself the winner, even though he didn't get as many votes. Like, the whole thing is so rigged, right? There's no choice but to run outside of the two-party duopoly, which is why we like Cornel West. But in my opinion, it's still a good thing that RFK is running because he can expose this. You know, he can point out, look, the DNC is not even giving me security. They're not even giving me protection, and my life is being threatened by assassins. I mean, it doesn't even sound real, but
Right, and it's hard. Like I'm not going around saying, and I don't believe this, that the election in 2020 was rigged. But when certain parts of the left react to like Trumpers saying that as if it's the most insane thing they have ever heard, in part because of the implications, but the reality is that we know that they rigged stuff. They rigged it in 16 against Bernie. They rigged it in 20 in different ways as well. It's absurd to think that the people in power who control all of these processes are not going to manipulate things in their favor. That doesn't mean that it's impossible to win or whatever, but or that we should accept that everything is rigged or something. But
Parenti argued that he argued that I believe it was the 2000 and 2004 elections were rigged.
Right.
Years ago by the Bush administration in their campaign.
Yeah.
So it's not preposterous.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, we don't have to agree with it, but we can, on the basis of, oh yeah, you think this was rigged. Let me show you everything else they do, everything else both parties do, why they do it, who they do it for, who they actually represent, and who gets shafted in the process, which is people like you or me and our families and all that. So, that's just the way my mind operates. When someone comes to me or I'm talking with someone and they bring up an issue, I'm always trying to find like, what is it that I can connect out of this in order to, elevate somehow the consciousness of the person I'm speaking to. And that doesn't seem to be how a lot of the people on the left approach the issue. Again, it's not everyone, but we have to get better at that. And this was one of the criticisms we had of that Cornel West door interview, specifically of West. Like, it seemed like what was implied was that to change one's narrative was to somehow forego on principle. And that's the opposite of that. Principle requires that, these are principles as Marxists, requires us to be flexible, to not be dogmatic, to not have a one-size-fits-all approach to affairs, a copy-paste approach to different regions of the country, and to be able to adapt to the audience that we're speaking to be able to understand what are the common sense notions these people are operating with, what are the common sense sensibilities and emotions that they have. And from here, where is it that I have to go, and how do I get there? What do I have to use in order to get there? How can I reorient the rational kernels to where they need to go? So whenever I've had conversations with people who say the election is rigged, that's how I approach it. I don't tell them, no, it's bullshit. You saying that leads us to fascism or whatever. And it's a different mentality that we have to have. If we're committed organizers and people committed to advancing the class struggle.
Exactly. Cornel West 2024. He's just got to bring me on as his TikTok manager, damn it. Hire me, Cornel. Nobody's pumping out pro Cornel West TikToks like your boy. They're all rigged, true. Every election is really rigged if you look at the amount of corporate money that goes in. The only way that Bernie was even able to challenge it was because he got so many small dollar donors.
Yeah. But, we've contacted the West campaign a few times, and we've brought up the fact that one of our directors, Noah, was the first person to publish a pro-West article in Newsweek, a media outlet with millions of followers. We also mentioned that within hours of his announcement, the most viral video besides his announcement was the one that Eddie made on TikTok with more than 500,000 views, endorsing the campaign and a few other videos. So we've reached out to them. We've included examples of how effective members of our institute could be in getting Dr. West's message out, but we haven't heard back. We've reached out through all the formal channels. We haven't gone through like our friends who have a connection with them. So maybe that's on us. Maybe we should have done that, but we haven't heard back anyways. So hopefully we do. We wouldn't mind interviewing him.
Absolutely. We'd love to have him on. Maybe they're scared because we got Marx in our name, but whatever. Embrace it. The people need a Stalinist, Cornell. I know you're a Christian democratic socialist, but you need a Stalinist on your campaign. Maybe that's not the best pitch. I also have a Christian background, Cornell West. Brother West.
Christian Stalinism. That's what we need.
Christian Stalinism. Well, Carlos, the other segments that I have are going to be like an hour long if you want to go into them. But I know you had a long day. Do you want to wrap up here?
Or? Well, if you have any shorter segments, I wouldn't mind doing those. I can maybe stick around for another.
Let me see. I have a 20-minute video called "How Putin Fooled the West" with 3 pages of notes. So,
oh god,
probably not that one today, but maybe I'll do a power hour tomorrow and cover that one. That sounds like a good idea. I have "Inventing Reality versus Manufacturing Consent," which is also a pretty long video. And then "The Truth About 9/11," which is also going to be really long. So yeah, no segment. Well, let's see here. Oh, let's look at this because I covered this on TikTok and it went viral on TikTok, or at least partially viral. But obviously, there's flooding going on in Libya right now, and 11,000 people died in these floods. Which, I mean, to put that in perspective, it was less than 3,000 people who died on 9/11. Right. And that's looked at as, rightfully so, as a tragic event in American history. Now, think about 11,000 Americans being taken out, and obviously 9/11 was a terrorist attack, which is different than a flood, a natural disaster. But the reason that the flood was so devastating is because Libya still basically doesn't have a central government, since their government was toppled by NATO in 2011, who killed their leader and then pulled out with no exit plan whatsoever. And allowed a bunch of warlords and such to start fighting in the power vacuum. And, what caused the flooding was a bursted dam, which I haven't seen any evidence that, the dam was hit by French bombs or whatever during the NATO intervention. But it doesn't matter. The reason that Libya is not able to keep up with their infrastructure and maintain their infrastructure anymore is because of the NATO intervention. Right under Gaddafi, they were building dams, they were building factories, they were building schools. Education was free, healthcare was widely available, and they were building hospitals and things like that. And now their infrastructure is crumbling, and you have this flood that comes as a result. And Obama and Biden are on Twitter asking you to donate to the Obama Foundation, so they can send a little bit of the relief money to Libya and then funnel the rest of it wherever they want. And even the money that they send to Libya is probably just going to go to back U.S. interests. So these scumfucks who destroyed Libya are now asking the working people of America to give them more money so they can help Libya, which is just gross. But here's a TikTok someone sent me a while back about a spokesperson for Gaddafi talking about Libya. There it is.
Libya is a tribal society. If the government, the central will collapses, do you think these people will just implement democracy? Never. They're a tribe.
This was before the intervention, and he's predicting everything that's about to happen.
And whole populations completely integrated into the system. They will fight each other. We will have a civil war like Somalia. I mean, you had a civil war in Iraq. Iraq is much more civilized society than Libya, much more established, much more organized than Libya, and it collapsed. It collapsed. Let alone Libya. We are closer to Somalia, as an example, than to Iraq. We will have a civil war. Somalia has a civil war for what now? 19 years? 18 years? Almost. So we will have a civil war in Libya. People will die. What makes me so angry and bitter is that there are people and countries that are prepared to see Libya suffer for a few years because they think the result might be good. Why should we suffer in the first place? I mean, Europe took its time to develop. The States took its time to develop. It's centuries. I mean, in the States, they had the civil war to free the slaves in 1861. Until 1961, they were still not liberated, 100 years later. So why do people want violence to take place in order to change things in Libya? Why is that? We need, you see the whole of Libya, from the Tunisian border to Jdabia to the south of Libya. Libya is like, I don't know, 5 or 6 times as big as Britain. What is the popular revolution? Where is it? Why is it just in the places in which the armed rebels have weapons? Because they are scaring people into not saying anything. So please.
So remember that the next time Obama or Hillary Clinton or Biden or any of the people who were directly involved in that intervention try and tell you, oh, but our intentions were good, right? We didn't mean to destroy the country and take out their central government and bring slavery back and bomb the crap out of their infrastructure. We thought we were doing the right thing. No, you didn't. You knew exactly what you were doing. You didn't want Gaddafi to create an African currency that was backed by gold so that they could get off the U.S.-dominated Bretton Woods system and develop their infrastructure and not be exploited by Western multinationals. So you killed them, and you threw the country into chaos, just like every political and geopolitical expert was telling you was going to happen, right? Just like what happened in Iraq, as that guy said. And now they want to say, oh, our hearts are with Libya. Give me a break. How disgusting and shameless can you be, Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama? You created this situation. The 11,000 dead Libyans who are buried underneath flooding right now, their blood is on your hands. And don't donate $1 to the Obama Foundation so he can filter that money into his own corporate interests or into American interests in Libya. Right? If you want to help out, find some direct mutual aid organizations to give to. Or if you really want to help out, get involved with overthrowing our scumbag-filled imperialist government who did this to Libya in the first place. That's the best thing you can do as an American.
Beautifully said, brother. You took the words out of my mouth. Gaddafi is a figure that represented hope for Africa as a whole, not just for Libya, which under his governance was the most prosperous nation in Africa, but for Africa as a whole, because he saw that the only way to successfully combat American, French, and neocolonialism in general was Africa uniting, and specifically in terms of finance and monetary policy, breaking away from French and dollar financial dominance, and establishing a currency that was backed by the immense reserves of gold that Libya and other parts of Africa have. So that would have been, just completely a break with the world order. Because if Africa breaks from the world order, everything else is crumbling. And we're seeing some of that now. I mean, the person that was just overthrown, Bongo in Gabon, he was the African leader, so-called Obama's man in Africa, which was leading the efforts within Africa against Gaddafi. Both the flood is a result of that coup, but in many ways, these coups against neocolonial governments are also working within the spirit of Gaddafi, and bringing back his legacy, which is tremendous, and is one that the most important African leaders. This is why socialism takes the form of Pan-Africanism in Africa, because neocolonialism partitioned this continent in order to keep them weak, divided, and controlled. The U.S. and France cannot control Africa if Africa stands together. And that's part of the central threat that Gaddafi represented. It's a threat that Nkrumah represented. It's a threat that Amilcar Cabral represented. It's a threat that was represented, in Burkina Faso by Thomas Sankara, and it's a threat that now is represented in Burkina Faso by Ibrahim Traoré and by all these other young coup leaders that are looking at a futureless future and see that the only way to control their futures, to lift their people's living standards, to actually achieve sovereignty, not the bullshit flag sovereignty and flag democracy that they have, where all of their central, substantial economic and political decisions are handled by the imperialist neocolonial West. The only way to actually be free is through standing up. And they're willing to threaten and they're willing to sacrifice anything. These coups are dangerous. They're dangerous. People can lose their lives, but they're willing to make whatever sacrifice necessary in order to win a better life, sovereignty, and freedom for themselves, for their peoples, and create the conditions when those are won in specific countries for helping others do the same and uniting the continent in its historic fight back against neocolonialism and imperialism in the region.
Absolutely. I want to highlight what Sebastian said here. Analyzing Gaddafi is a good exercise in overcoming the purity fetish. So true. He's one of those anti-liberal thinkers who's not a Marxist-Leninist. He's not part of the Marxist-Leninist canon. And if you read the Green Book, he's actually got some criticisms of Marxist-Leninist governance. He's very anti-authoritarian. He wants to set up a system of governance that's more decentralized, which might have been the reason that, might have contributed to NATO being able to take him out. But that's, neither here nor there. Still, it's very important to read, and people try and use that as a gotcha. Like, well, Gaddafi wasn't a Marxist-Leninist, so you guys should support NATO destroying him and destroying his country? I don't care that he wasn't a Marxist-Leninist. He used socialist economic policy, explicitly socialist economic policy, to turn Libya into one of the most prosperous countries in Africa. Right? Marxism-Leninism is just Marxism applied practically. Right. So if he's developing socialism and it's not specifically within my ideological framework, it doesn't matter. I still support it, and I'm still against NATO interventionism. And also, I saw someone bring up the famous video. Just think of this video anytime you think maybe Lenin and the Bolsheviks were too harsh on the capitalists, or too harsh on the Romanov family, or too harsh to the counter-revolutionaries who they sent to the Gulag. Think about this video.
The land of unconfirmed. Yes, we came, we saw, he died. Did it have anything to do with your visit? No, I'm sure it did.
That's in response to Gaddafi being killed, being sodomized to death by U.S.-backed extremist groups and rebels, which threw Libya into chaos and brought slavery back to the country. We came, we saw, he died.
The fact that
how wonderful would it? I'm not done. How wonderful would it be to see Hillary Clinton doing hard labor in a gulag?
Oof.
How wonderful would it to see this bitch who just said we came, we saw, he died, swinging a hammer and working like hard 8 hours a day? Like, I'm not in favor of bringing the gulags back, except for these people. All right, now I'm done.
Well. Yeah, the Gulag bag thing, that's your comment. The Institute's fully in favor of bringing back. No, I'm just joking. But, the fact that people have the gall of calling themselves communists and Marxists and Marxist-Leninists and blah, 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 blah. And then in 2016, go ahead and endorse this fucking monster, this demon that has destroyed the most prosperous country in Africa, that has set the movement for African freedom back, that has set the movement for freedom in Latin America back. Because she was also central in overthrowing Manuel Zelaya in Honduras and inaugurating a period of a decade of just horrific right-wing rule, corruption, murder of activists. I mean, we got friends who know people who've been murdered because they're peasant activists and socialist activists in Honduras. And, this is a real fucking criminal. Someone who, if there was any semblance of justice in this country would be serving a life sentence along with everyone else in her demonic political class. But we don't have justice. We have an injustice system where poor people who are forced to do petty crimes to survive are locked up for life, and these criminals who have the blood of tens of thousands, of hundreds of thousands, and of millions of people on their hands get to walk around freely and get to be looked up to by a bunch of other fucking idiots that have been lied to and manipulated to see these demons as heroes.
Absolutely. It's hard to not get viscerally angry when you see stuff like that. You know, like like what is wrong with these people? And then you see their foot soldiers, you know, defending them every step of the way. It's like how naive do you got to be to fall for their rhetoric? You know, we're better than Republicans. Republicans are so bad. Like, you guys brought slavery back to Libya. Slavery. Open air slavery. And then Obama still doesn't, he still doesn't take any of the blame for Trump. He talks about how evil Trump was and how Russia supported him, and the American people, they're just so stupid. That's why they voted for Trump. Like, you outsourced all the American people's jobs. You bailed out the big banks. You used all their tax money to destroy Libya. You created the Trump phenomena that you hate so much, Obama. You just refuse to take any credit for it because you and the rest of the Democratic establishment hacks who you hang out with are narcissists.
Beautifully said, brother. But I'll let you go to get to your longer segments. It's been an absolute pleasure talking with you and Kyle and engaging with the audience. I hope you all have a good night, and I'll see you again, not tomorrow because that's Family Day, but the Lord's Day and Family Day at the same time. But I'll see you sometime this week for another stream, as always, covering news, discussing Marxist theory, and doing a whole lot more. So thank you so much.
For sure, brother. Thanks for joining us.
Good night.
I'm gonna call it here. I'll do the other segments tomorrow for a power hour. They're pretty long segments, so I just want to do it when I have more energy, and I haven't been going for 2 hours. So thank you all so much for being here. Appreciate you. Thank you to our moderators, Ware Pilgrim and Cobra Commander. Appreciate the crap out of you guys. Now Eddie can do karaoke. Nobody wants that. I'll try, but patreon.com/MidwesternMarks if you want to support financially. Also got our bookstore on MidwesternMarks.com. I'm gonna go film like one more TikTok in response to that Democrat who commented on the RFK video. We'll see you next time. Thanks, everybody. Solidarity.
Cannot be solved without a radical redistribution of political and economic power.